What drives a man to the darkest corners of humanity? Is it a troubled past, a fractured mind, or the relentless pursuit of power? Some men slip through history unnoticed, their stories forgotten, while others leave a mark so dark it can never be erased. Charles Manson is one such name, a sinister force whose influence seeped into the minds of his followers, leaving an indelible stain on society. He wasn't just a criminal, he was a manipulator, a self-styled messiah who lured people into his twisted vision. But how did a common drifter gain such power over his followers? And what was it about his words that convinced them to commit such unthinkable acts? As we peel back the layers of this disturbing tale, get ready to enter a world where reality blurred with madness and devotion turned deadly. Charles Manson's life was marked by instability from the very beginning. Born on November 12, 1934, in Cincinnati, Ohio, his mother, Ada Kathleen Maddox, was only 15 years old and unprepared for motherhood. His biological father, believed to be Colonel Walker Henderson Scott, was a drifter who abandoned Kathleen before Charles was even born. Seeking stability, Kathleen briefly married William Eugene Manson, from whom Charles took his last name, but the marriage dissolved in less than 3 years. Kathleen was known for her reckless lifestyle, frequently engaging in heavy drinking, disappearing for days, and leaving young Charles with various babysitters. Her criminal activities caught up with her in 1939, when she and her brother were arrested for armed robbery, leading to her imprisonment and leaving Charles to be raised by strict and unaffectionate relatives in West Virginia. Manson home and his relatives in West Virginia. As a child, he displayed disruptive behavior, craving attention in destructive ways. By the age of 9, he had already begun engaging in criminal acts such as theft, arson, and even setting fire to his elementary school. His lack of stable parental guidance, combined with frequent rejections and institutional placements, pushed him further into delinquency. After multiple failed attempts at settling into conventional schooling, he was sent to the Gabalt School for Boys in Indiana, a reform institution for troubled youth, but he escaped after a few months. During his teenage years, Manson cycled through various juvenile detention centers, each one hardening him further. He was frequently arrested for theft, truancy, and violent outbursts, making him a constant presence in reform institutions. Rather than learning discipline, he adapted by manipulating other inmates and exploiting weaknesses to survive. Despite multiple chances at rehabilitation, he repeatedly escaped, each time returning to a life of crime, setting the stage for his troubled future. As an adult, Charles Manson spent years behind bars, where prison became more than just confinement. It became his classroom. He absorbed ideas from books, including How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, which taught him how to manipulate others through charm and persuasion. He dabbled in Scientology and spent hours learning to play the guitar, convinced music would make him famous. During this time, he also experienced 2 failed marriages. First to Rosalie Willis in 1955, with whom he had a son, and later to Leona Stevens in 1959, with whom he had another child. Both marriages ended in divorce while he was incarcerated, reinforcing his deep-seated resentment and abandonment issues. But more than anything, he studied people, learning how to control them by exploiting their fears and insecurities. By the time he was released in 1967, he was no longer just a petty crook. He had a vision and a mission. San Francisco was alive with change. The Summer of Love had drawn thousands of young people searching for freedom, purpose, and escape from society's rules. Haight-Ashbury had become a haven for hippies, filled with music, drugs, and endless possibilities. Manson, always watching and learning, saw the perfect opportunity. He spent his days in Golden Gate Park, playing guitar, taking LSD, and studying the people around him. But unlike the other spiritual leaders preaching love and peace, his message was different, darker. He told those who would listen that morality was a lie, that society was crumbling, and that only those who followed him would survive the coming collapse. He planted the idea that they needed to prepare for something bigger, something inevitable. It didn't take long for him to attract his first devoted followers. Young women, lost and searching, were drawn to his charisma and the way he made them feel special. Mary Brunner, a quiet librarian, was among the first, soon giving birth to his son. Others followed: Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenschinkel, and Lynette Fromm, each becoming part of his growing circle. But Manson's vision was evolving. Inspired by Beatles lyrics and his twisted interpretation of the Bible, he began preaching about Helter Skelter, a coming race war that would bring the world to its knees. What started as a search for belonging had now become something far more sinister. Manson needed total control, and Spahn Ranch became the perfect place to make that happen. Hidden in the dry, desolate hills outside Los Angeles, the abandoned movie set became his sanctuary. Days blurred together in a haze of LSD, music, sex, and devotion. Under his watchful eye, his followers surrendered their identities, their thoughts, and their pasts. They became extensions of his will, hanging on to his every word, ready to do whatever he asked. At Spahn Ranch, the Manson family wasn't just a gathering of lost souls anymore. They were something far more dangerous. On August 8, 1969, Manson's delusions turned into real terror. He sent his followers, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, to 10050 Cielo Drive, the home of actress Sharon Tate and director Roman Polanski. What followed was pure horror. Sharon Tate, 8 months pregnant, begged for her unborn child's life, but was stabbed 16 times. Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, Wojciech Frykowski, and Stephen Parent met the same gruesome fate. Blood covered the scene, and the word pig was smeared on the door, a chilling message meant to send shockwaves through Hollywood. The next night, Manson himself led his followers to the home of Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. He tied them up, whispering words of fear, before ordering their execution. Once again, blood became his message. Death to pigs and rise were scrawled across the walls. But this wasn't just murder. It was Manson's vision in motion. He believed these killings would ignite Helter Skelter, a race war in which Black Americans would overthrow whites, and in the aftermath, he and his followers would emerge as rulers of the New World. The murders left Los Angeles paralyzed with fear. For months, the case remained unsolved, with the city gripped by paranoia. Susan Atkins, arrested for an unrelated crime, couldn't keep quiet. She bragged to her cellmates about the Tate-LaBianca killings, describing every gruesome detail. That confession cracked the case wide open, leading investigators straight to Charles Manson and his devoted followers. The trial of Charles Manson and his followers was unlike anything the world had ever seen. From the moment proceedings began, it was clear this would not be a typical courtroom battle. Manson, always craving attention, carved a swastika into his forehead. His female followers, Patricia Krenwinkel, Susan Atkins, and Leslie Van Houten, remained under his control, often chanting in unison and giggling as if they were still under his spell. Despite the chaos, prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi methodically built the case against Manson, proving that while he had not physically committed the murders, his influence and orders made him just as guilty. In 1971, Manson and several of his followers were sentenced to death, but their sentences were later commuted to life in prison when California abolished the death penalty. Even behind bars, Manson refused to fade into obscurity. He continued to manipulate, using interviews as a platform to spread his distorted beliefs. The swastika on his forehead became a symbol of his madness, and his erratic behavior only reinforced his infamy. He spent decades in prison, showing no remorse, until his death in 2017 at the age of 83. The Manson family murders were not just about crime. They were about control, manipulation, and the terrifying power of charisma. Manson's story serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of how easily the lost and vulnerable can be drawn into darkness. But one thing is certain: Charles Manson will never be forgotten, and he will also never be forgiven. Thanks for watching. If you found this deep dive into Charles Manson's story compelling, Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime content. Let us know in the comments which case you'd like us to cover next.